Everybody. How are you doing today? It's very nice to have you here. And today I want to speak a little bit about our upcoming 3-week program that begins on February 19th, which really is a continuation of our last 3-week program, Sahaja, Sthiti, Awakening and Nervous System, living in a true independence from the past. And I wanted to speak today a little bit about that. This is just one of the elements that we are addressing or speaking about in our programs and in this upcoming program also. What I call the true independence from the past. This really is a definition of freedom. And I really make a distinction between the direct experience of presence, which is when we know our true nature directly in a moment, between that and awakening, which really is the permanent shift from knowing yourself as this body to knowing yourself as presence. And between freedom, which I call the true independence from the past. Because as you know already, awakening does not necessarily mean that all the patterns of the past stop arising. So when I speak about freedom, true independence from the past, I'm speaking about a willingness to or ability to recognize past for what it is. And also about an ability, a willingness to be present to it as it arises. And also the willingness or ability to be here, to rest here, and really wait for this natural movement that arises here. You know, we are speaking about the Sahaja, Sthiti, the movement that is prior to the mind, that is not dependent on the mind, where we can directly experience, it's a direct communication from our true nature. And where we can directly experience how, you know, the functioning in the world is really not dependent on the mind. Not necessarily dependent on the mind. And today I wanted to speak just a little bit about one of the small elements of this, which I call the true yes and no. You know, because recognizing past for what it is, that's one step, that's one thing. But then in order for the past not to continue, then we have to be able to act on the clarity that we have in a moment. Right? So it's not just the recognition, but then if the recognition shows us, tells us, this is the way to go, or this is how it is, or this is what it means, then it's not only the recognition, but also the willingness to actually act on that. Because if we don't, then the past still perpetuates. And so true yes and no is one element of that. And you know, everybody here experiences the very simple impulse that is a yes or a no. We might have moved away from it in many instances because of the circumstances of the past, because our ability to recognize and act on it has been affected in some way by our past. However, I believe that really we still, even if it's really faint and really far away, so to speak, we still have that innate sense of what is a yes and what is a no. And there may be many circumstances in your life, in your past, that have affected your ability to recognize and act on that true yes and no. Conditioning in general, the circumstances of your life, trauma, illness, physical challenges, all sorts of things that can affect the nervous system and can affect our ability to recognize and act on that simple yes and no recognition. And sometimes we have to become aware of the past, aware of the circumstances of the past, aware of the misunderstanding that we have, and not just aware mentally, because mentally, emotionally, that sometimes is helpful to know that, but really to become aware of it in our nervous systems. Being able to actually uncover some of that resilience that allows us to function in a world in an embodied way, in a way in which we embody our recognition of presence. And we embody the clarity that comes from that. That yes and no movement, that's a very definite clarity when it comes to functioning in a world. And so often, as you are looking at that yourself, as I'm speaking about this, so often we have so much understanding and misunderstanding and conditioning around that, around that simple ability to act on the clarity of your own yes and no. First of all, what it does when we do that, it really stops the perpetuation of the past. Right? Because it's not enough to recognize it, we have to act on it, and then we are really in the moment, in the response to what is actually present. That's the very definition of presence also, right? Or an embodied state in response to what is. Not what we think, not what we would like, not what we think is okay, not what anybody else thinks is okay, but just what is. And it's very powerful, and so often it's difficult both to act on the true no and also to act on the true yes, right? But so often, I say when we can act on our true no, then we can also act on our true yes as well. Sometimes it feels like we can't, because, if we do that, then the world is going to fall apart, which of course is not true. So that's one of the areas I want to be addressing in this upcoming 3-week intensive, and also looking at the, at the reasons, the hesitations, the explanations that we use, the justifications that we use in order to not to act on that. It's very powerful, that very simple, it sounds so simple, right? Not always easy, this very simple clarity. So I want to invite you to join me in these upcoming 3 weeks. If you are new to me, if you have never been to a program, you can join the first week for free. We also have a special price for you for all 3 weeks if you are new. And if you have been watching these videos and you have questions or want to clarify some things or just curious about it, just come and join us. Join us in this first week of this upcoming program. And also, if you are enjoying these videos, please share, please subscribe, please comment. We really, really appreciate that. It really makes it possible for more people to be aware of this. I'm very much looking forward to our time together.